They say you never really know your children until they're old enough to betray you. I learned that on a Thursday evening in late October, standing in the marble-floored foyer of a house that cost more than I'd earned in my entire life. My son didn't know I'd arrived early. That was my first mistake. Or maybe it was his. The house belonged to his in-laws, the Hendersons. 6,000 square feet of suburban perfection in one of those neighborhoods where the lawns look painted and the mailboxes cost more than my first car. I'd driven 40 minutes through rush-hour traffic because Derek, my son, had asked me to come early to help set up for some dinner party. Said he needed my advice on something technical. Said it was important. I should have known better. I parked my 10-year-old Honda behind a row of luxury SUVs and Tesla sedans, feeling the familiar weight of inadequacy that seemed to follow me whenever I visited Derek's new life. My wife Linda had offered to come, but I'd told her it was just a quick thing, in and out. I'd be home by 8. The front door was unlocked. I let myself in quietly, not wanting to startle anyone. The foyer opened into a massive living room, with vaulted ceilings and windows that stretched from floor to ceiling. Everything was white or chrome or glass. It looked like a museum, not a home. That's when I heard Derek's voice. He was in the next room, the den, I guessed, and he was talking to someone. Multiple someones. His tone was confident, almost boastful. The kind of voice you use when you're trying to impress people. I should have announced myself. Should have walked in and said hello like a normal person. Instead, I stopped and listened. The National Logistics Network I designed handles over 3 million transactions daily, Derek was saying. It took me 5 years to build from the ground up, but the infrastructure is solid. Self-healing protocols, redundant pathways, predictive load balancing. It's basically the gold standard for enterprise-level distribution systems. I designed that network. Not him. Me. 23 years of my life went into that system. I'd started building it when Derek was still in elementary school, learning his multiplication tables while I was learning how to route data packets through servers spread across 38 states. I'd lost sleep over it, lost hair over it, almost lost my marriage over it because of the nights I spent in that cramped home office, fighting with code that refused to compile and network protocols that kept breaking in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Derek had helped, sure. I'd brought him in during his college years, taught him the basics, let him work on some of the newer modules. But designed it? Built it from the ground up? That was my life's work, he was claiming. The complexity is really in the handshake protocols, Derek continued. Most systems fail because they can't anticipate node failures in real time. My architecture predicts failures before they happen and reroutes automatically. It's almost intelligent in how it responds to stress. Impressive, said a man's voice. Deep, authoritative. That would be Richard Henderson, Derek's father-in-law. And you implemented this yourself? Every line of code, Derek said without hesitation. Well, I had some help from my father early on, but that was mostly basic infrastructure. The sophisticated stuff, the real innovation, that's all mine. Basic infrastructure, the sophisticated stuff. I stood in that foyer, my hands clenched so tight my knuckles went white, and felt something crack inside my chest. Not my heart, that was still beating, fast and hard. Something else. Something like faith, or trust, or whatever it is that binds a father to his son. Your father must be very proud, said a woman's voice. That would be Caroline Henderson, Richard's wife, Derek's mother-in-law. There was a pause, a beat of silence that stretched just a little too long. He doesn't really understand the technical side, Derek said finally. He's more of a legacy system guy. Good with the old protocols, but the modern stuff is beyond him. Legacy system guy. Beyond him. I'd written 3 books on modern network architecture. I consulted for Fortune 500 companies on cutting-edge infrastructure design. Last year, I'd given a keynote speech at a national conference where Derek himself had attended and taken notes. Legacy system guy. That's the problem with that generation, Caroline said, her voice dripping with sympathy. They get stuck in their ways. Technology moves so fast now. Exactly, Derek agreed. I love my dad, but he peaked about 15 years ago. It's hard to watch, honestly. He still uses a flip phone. Laughter rippled through the room. Polite, condescending laughter. I used a flip phone because I didn't need a smartphone for what I did. My work happened on computers with real keyboards and multiple monitors, not on some 5-inch screen while standing in line at Starbucks. But standing there in that pristine foyer, hearing them laugh, I suddenly understood how it looked to them. Old, outdated, irrelevant. Well, we're very impressed with what you've built, Richard said. Very impressed indeed. This partnership could be extremely lucrative for everyone involved. Partnership. That was news to me. I think so too, Derek said. And honestly, having family involved makes it even better. Elizabeth and I are really excited about the possibilities. Elizabeth, his wife, my daughter-in-law. I'd never liked her much, if I'm being honest. She was polite enough on the surface, but there was always something calculating in her eyes. The way she looked at things, at people, like she was assessing their value. Derek had changed after he married her. Become more concerned with appearances, with status, with climbing some invisible ladder I'd never cared about. But I'd kept my mouth shut because that's what you do. You don't criticize your children's choices. You support them. You trust that you raised them right and they'll figure out their own path. Standing there listening to my son claim credit for 2 decades of my work, while his in-laws laughed at my flip phone, I realized how naive I'd been. The sound of footsteps jolted me back to awareness. Someone was coming toward the foyer. I had maybe 3 seconds to decide what to do. I could confront them right then, march in and expose the lie, make a scene, or I could leave, quietly, before anyone knew I'd heard. Something stopped me from confronting them. Some instinct that said this required more than righteous anger and hurt feelings. This required strategy. I turned and walked back out the front door, closing it silently behind me. My hands were shaking, my whole body was shaking. I sat in my car for 5 minutes, trying to process what I'd just heard, trying to understand how the boy I'd raised, the son I'd mentored and taught and loved, could stand in that room and erase me so casually. My phone buzzed. A text from Derek. Dad, where are you? Thought you were coming early to help? I stared at that message for a long moment. Then I typed a reply. Got delayed. Won't make it. Have a good dinner. I didn't wait for his response. I started the car and began to drive, not toward home, but toward my storage unit across town. The one where I kept all my old equipment and files from before I'd transitioned to mostly digital archives. Because if my son wanted to play games with my legacy, he was about to learn a very important lesson about infrastructure. The architect always keeps the blueprints. While you're here, hit the hype button. Don't forget to subscribe and support this channel with a like. And tell us below, have you ever faced something like this? The storage unit smelled like dust and old electronics. I stood in the doorway, letting my eyes adjust to the dim light from the single bulb dangling from the ceiling. I hadn't been here in almost 2 years. Most of my work was digital now, stored on encrypted drives and cloud servers, but the physical documentation was still here, filed away in bankers' boxes and old filing cabinets. I found what I needed in the 3rd box from the left. Original design documents for the logistics network, dating back 23 years. Handwritten notes in my own cramped scrawl, detailing the architecture decisions, the protocol choices, the infrastructure layout. Partnership agreements signed by me, contracts with my name on them. Letters of recommendation from clients who'd hired me, not Derek, to build their systems. And most importantly, the operational documentation that Derek had never bothered to learn. The stuff he'd dismissed as basic infrastructure while he was claiming credit for my sophisticated work. There was a particular protocol in the network, something I'd built in as a failsafe years ago. A handshake sequence that required manual renewal every 18 months to prevent unauthorized duplication of the core architecture. It was buried deep in the system, invisible to anyone who hadn't built it from the ground up. Derek had no idea it existed. That renewal was due in 3 weeks. Without it, the network wouldn't crash. I wasn't that vindictive, and there were too many innocent people depending on it, but it would default to a limited functionality mode. Enough to keep things running, but not enough to support the kind of expansion Derek was apparently planning with the Hendersons. I loaded the documents into my car, locked up the storage unit, and finally headed home. Linda was in the kitchen when I walked in, preparing dinner. She took one look at my face and put down the knife she was using to chop vegetables. What happened? I told her everything. The overheard conversation, Derek's lies, the partnership deal, the laughter about my flip phone. I told her about the documentation I'd retrieved and the protocol renewal that Derek didn't know about. She listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from concern to anger to something harder and colder. "How long has this been going on?" she asked when I finished. "I don't know. Tonight's the first time I've heard him actually claim credit, but now that I think about it..." I trailed off, remembering things. Little things. The way Derek had started introducing me at professional events over the past year. My father, who did some of the early groundwork. The way he'd stopped inviting me to client meetings. The way he'd begun referring to the network as his system instead of our system, or even just the system. "He's been erasing you," Linda said. Her voice was quiet, but there was steel in it. Slowly, carefully, so you wouldn't notice until it was too late. "Yeah. What are you going to do?" That was the question, wasn't it? I could confront Derek directly, have it out with him, father to son, and demand he tell the truth. But what would that accomplish? He'd already chosen his path, already decided that his relationship with the Hendersons, his marriage to Elizabeth, his new life of suburban wealth and status, was more important than honoring his father. I could go public, expose him professionally. But that would hurt a lot of innocent people who depended on the network, and it would make me look like a bitter old man attacking his own son out of jealousy. Or I could be smart about this, strategic. Let Derek dig his own grave while I documented everything and prepared for the moment when his lies would inevitably collapse. "I'm going to let him think he got away with it," I said finally. "And I'm going to wait for him to need me." Linda studied my face for a long moment. Then she nodded. "He will need you. Men like that always do. They build their castles on sand and wonder why the tide washes them away." We ate dinner in silence, both of us lost in thought. Around 9 o'clock, my phone rang. Derek. I let it ring 4 times before answering. "Dad, where were you tonight? We were expecting you." His voice was cheerful, oblivious, like he hadn't just spent the evening claiming credit for my life's work. "I texted you," I said calmly. "Got delayed." "Oh, I didn't see it until just now." "Well, you missed a great dinner. The Hendersons are amazing people, really impressive. We talked about the network. They're very interested in partnering on some expansion projects." "That's good." "Yeah, it's really exciting. Actually, I wanted to ask you something. Richard, that's Elizabeth's father, he had some technical questions about the infrastructure. Nothing major, just some clarification on the redundancy protocols. I told him I'd get back to him with details." "What kind of details?" "Just, how the failover systems work. The automatic rerouting stuff. I explained the basics, but he wants documentation." Of course he did, because Derek had been talking out of his ass and Richard Henderson was smart enough to ask for proof. "I can send you some documentation," I said. "That would be great. Thanks, Dad. I knew I could count on you." The casual entitlement in his voice made my jaw clench. I knew I could count on you, like I was some employee he could summon when he needed technical support. "Derek," I said carefully, "this partnership with the Hendersons, how serious is it?" "Very serious. We're talking about a major capital investment. Richard wants to expand the network into new markets. Healthcare, finance, real estate. The potential is huge. And you explained to him that you built the network? There was a pause. Just a fraction of a second, but I heard it. The moment of hesitation before he committed to the lie. I explained the architecture and my role in developing it, yeah. Not a confirmation, not a denial, just a careful sidestep. I see. Why do you ask? Just curious about the scope of the partnership. It's good to see you doing well. Thanks, Dad. That means a lot. Listen, I've got to run. Elizabeth and I have some planning to do. But seriously, if you could send those docs by tomorrow, that would be perfect. Richard wants to review them before our meeting next week. What meeting? Oh, just a follow-up. Nothing formal. He wants to go over the technical specifications before we move forward with the investment. A meeting where Derek would presumably continue to pretend he knew what he was talking about, where he'd rely on my documentation to support his lies, where Richard Henderson would decide whether to invest serious money into something Derek didn't actually understand. I'll send the docs, I said. You're the best. Love you, Dad. He hung up before I could respond. I sat there holding the phone, staring at the dark screen, feeling like I'd just had a conversation with a stranger wearing my son's voice. Linda appeared in the doorway. What did he want? Documentation for his in-laws. They're asking technical questions he can't answer. Are you going to give it to him? I thought about that. I could refuse. Tell him no. Figure it out yourself. You built it after all. But that would tip my hand. Derek would know I'd heard something, suspected something. He'd get defensive, maybe cut me out entirely. No. Better to play along. Better to be the helpful, outdated legacy system father who sends his brilliant son the documentation he needs. Better to watch and wait and let Derek keep digging. Yeah, I said. I'm going to give him exactly what he asked for. But not everything he needed. I spent the next 2 hours at my computer, carefully preparing a documentation package. Everything was accurate. I wouldn't falsify technical specs, that crossed a line, but it was incomplete. The overview documents explained what the network did and how it functioned, but they didn't explain why it functioned that way. They didn't include the architectural decisions, the fail-safe protocols, the manual processes that required my specific knowledge. They were perfect for impressing potential investors. They were useless for actually maintaining or expanding the system. At midnight, I sent the package to Derek with a brief note. Here's what you asked for. Let me know if you need anything else. His reply came 30 seconds later. Perfect. Thanks. 3 exclamation points. The enthusiasm of someone who thought he'd just dodged a bullet. I closed my laptop and went to bed, but I didn't sleep much. I kept thinking about that conversation I'd overheard. The casual way Derek had erased 23 years of my work. The laughter about my flip phone. The sympathy in Caroline Henderson's voice when she talked about my generation getting stuck in our ways. And I kept thinking about what Linda had said. They build their castles on sand. Derek had built his new life on a foundation of lies. His marriage, his status, his promising partnership with the Hendersons. All of it rested on the fiction that he was some kind of technical genius who'd single-handedly created a world-class logistics network. Sooner or later, that foundation would crack. It always did. The only question was whether I'd be there to watch it crumble, or whether I'd be the one holding the sledgehammer. The next morning, I received an email from a lawyer representing Derek. A cease and desist letter demanding I stop slandering him to his business associates and threatening legal action if I continued to interfere with his professional relationships. I forwarded it to my own lawyer, a friend from college named Tom who specialized in intellectual property law. He called me 30 minutes later. "This is garbage," Tom said. "They're trying to scare you. You didn't slander anyone. You told the truth about your own work. And you have documentation proving everything you said. Can they actually sue me? They can try. They won't win, but they can make your life difficult for a while. Discovery, depositions, legal fees. It's a harassment tactic. He paused. How far are you willing to take this? As far as necessary. Good, because I think Derek is going to push hard. He has a lot to lose. I know. Paul, I have to ask, do you want to reconcile with him? Because if you do, now would be the time, before this gets uglier. I thought about Derek's face in that conference room. The moment he called me a legacy system. The way he'd tried to grab me, control me, make me stop talking. No, I said. I want him to face the consequences of his actions. Then we proceed. I'll draft a response to the cease and desist and send it today. Over the next week, things escalated quickly. Derek posted on social media about family betrayal and older generations refusing to let go. He didn't name me directly, but anyone who knew us understood who he was talking about. His post got hundreds of sympathetic comments from people who didn't know the full story. Elizabeth called Linda, screaming about how I'd destroyed their marriage and ruined their standing with her family. Linda hung up on her. Richard Henderson called to tell me the Hendersons had confronted Derek about the network. He'd tried to maintain the fiction for about 15 minutes before Caroline Henderson, Elizabeth's mother, asked him point-blank if he'd lied about building the system. He'd admitted it. The family was, in Richard's words, extremely disappointed. How's Elizabeth taking it? I asked. Not well. She's furious with Derek. Apparently she knew he'd exaggerated his role but didn't realize how much. She feels he made her complicit in the lie. Is their marriage in trouble? I'm staying out of that, Richard said. But between us? Yes, my wife is counseling divorce. I felt a twinge of guilt at that. Whatever Derek had done to me, I didn't want to destroy his marriage. Then I remembered his voice in that den. My father peaked 15 years ago. The laughter about my flip phone. The guilt faded. Richard and I continued working on the partnership details. He wanted to expand the network into 3 new sectors, which would require significant architectural updates. I spent long days in my home office, reviewing the current infrastructure and planning the modifications. It was the kind of deep technical work I loved, the kind I hadn't done in years because I'd been too busy maintaining Derek's fiction. On Friday afternoon, I got a call from an old colleague, James, who'd worked with me on the original network development 20 years ago. Paul, I just got off the phone with Derek. He's calling everyone from the old team, trying to get us to back up his version of events. What version? That he built the network. That you're senile and taking credit for his work. That you're sabotaging him out of jealousy. And what did you tell him? I told him I was there, remember? I watched you build that system from nothing. I watched you work 16-hour days for months on end. He was in high school when we were writing the core protocols. He's either delusional or desperate. Probably both. He also threatened me, James added. Said if I testified against him in any legal proceedings, he'd make sure I never worked in the industry again. He threatened you? He's panicking, Paul. Men do stupid things when they panic. After we hung up, I sat in my office thinking about that. Derek was panicking, lashing out, making threats. That meant he knew his position was indefensible, which meant he'd probably escalate even further. I was right. Saturday morning, someone broke into my storage unit. The lock was cut, the door forced open. They'd torn through the boxes of documentation, dumping files on the floor, rifling through everything. Nothing was stolen, probably because they didn't find what they were looking for. But the destruction was thorough. The police took a report, but said there wasn't much they could do without evidence. No cameras in the storage facility, no witnesses, no fingerprints. I knew it was Derek, or someone working for him. Who else would target that specific storage unit? Linda wanted to confront him directly. I stopped her. He wants a reaction, I said. He wants me angry and irrational. That's when I make mistakes. So what do you do? I document everything. The break-in, the lawyer's letter, the threats to James. I build a case. For what? For when he finally goes too far. That night, Derek called. His first direct contact since the meeting with Richard. Dad, Derek, we need to talk. I don't think we do. I'm not asking, I'm telling. Meet me tomorrow. The distribution hub on Foster Street. 1 o'clock. Why? Because we're going to settle this, you and me. No lawyers, no in-laws, no business partners. Just us. Something in his voice made me uneasy. I'm not meeting you in some isolated warehouse, Derek. Scared of your own son? Cautious of what you might do when you're desperate. I'm not desperate. I'm giving you a chance to fix what you broke. I didn't break anything. You destroyed my reputation. You ruined my marriage. You poisoned the Hendersons against me. All because I didn't give you proper credit at some dinner party. It's pathetic, Dad. You're pathetic. I kept my voice level. If that's what you think happened, then yes, we need to talk. But not at some warehouse. Somewhere public. Foster Street, 1 o'clock. Come alone or don't come at all. He hung up. I immediately called Richard Henderson, explained the situation. Don't go, Richard said. It's obviously a trap. A trap for what? He's not going to physically attack me. Maybe not. But he might try to get you alone and record you saying something he can use against you. Or he might have witnesses there to claim you threatened him. Men with nothing to lose do unpredictable things. He's still my son. He stopped being just your son when he tried to steal your life's work. Now he's an adversary. After I hung up, Linda made her position clear. You're not going. I have to. Why? What do you think you'll accomplish? I don't know. Maybe nothing. But if I don't show up, he'll use that against me somehow. He'll tell everyone I refused to meet with him, refused to work things out. It'll be another piece in his narrative. Let him have his narrative. You have the truth. The truth and $3 will buy me coffee. In this situation, perception matters. And right now, Derek is working very hard to paint me as the villain. Linda started to argue, then stopped. You're going regardless of what I say, aren't you? Yes. Then I'm coming with you. He said to come alone. I don't care what he said. You're not meeting him in some isolated warehouse without backup. We argued about it for another hour. Finally, we compromised. Linda would come, but stay in the car, parked where she could see the entrance. If anything seemed wrong, she'd call the police. Sunday morning felt heavy. Storm clouds building on the horizon, the air thick and electric. I dressed in layers. It would be cold in an unheated warehouse, and made sure my phone was fully charged. Linda insisted I share my location with her continuously. The drive to Foster Street took 20 minutes. The distribution hub was in an industrial area, surrounded by other warehouses and manufacturing facilities. Most were closed on Sunday. The streets were empty. Linda parked across the street with a clear line of sight to the main entrance. 30 minutes, she said. If you're not out in 30 minutes, I'm calling the police. It won't take that long. 30 minutes, Paul. She was right. Tomorrow would be hard, and the day after that, and every day until this was resolved. The hearing for the injunction against Brandon Tech was scheduled for Thursday. Tom spent the days before preparing me for testimony. What to say, how to say it, how to stay calm under cross-examination. Derek's lawyer is going to attack your credibility, Tom warned. They'll paint you as a bitter father jealous of his son's success. They'll question your memory, your documentation, your motives. Let them. It's not that simple. The judge needs to believe you, and if you come across as vindictive or unstable, that hurts our case. So, I'm supposed to pretend I'm not angry? You're supposed to focus on the facts, the network architecture, the licensing agreement, the timeline of development, not your feelings about Derek's betrayal. I practiced for hours, answering questions about technical specifications, explaining the difference between operational access and ownership rights, describing the 23 years of work that went into building the system. Tom played devil's advocate, hitting me with aggressive questions designed to provoke emotional responses. By Wednesday evening, I was exhausted, but prepared. Thursday morning arrived cold and gray. Linda came with me to the courthouse. Tom met us in the hallway outside the courtroom. "Derek's here," Tom said, "with his lawyer and someone from Brandon Tech." "Is he planning to testify?" "Probably. His lawyer will want him to present his version of events. The fabricated version." "Don't say that in court. Let the facts speak for themselves." We entered the courtroom. It was smaller than I expected, more like an administrative hearing room than a proper courtroom. The judge's bench at the front, tables for the lawyers, a few rows of seats for observers. Derek was sitting at the defendant's table with his lawyer, a sharp-looking woman in her 40s. He didn't look at me when we walked in, just stared straight ahead, his jaw tight. Next to him was a man in his 50s wearing an expensive suit. Brandon Tech's representative, probably. He looked confident, relaxed, like this was routine business. The judge entered, a woman, mid-60s, with gray hair pulled back severely. She looked tired and impatient. "Let's get started," she said. "This is a hearing on a preliminary injunction to prevent Brandon Tech Solutions from operating a logistics network allegedly copied from Mr. Paul Reeves's intellectual property. Mr. Moss, you're representing the plaintiff?" Gerald Moss stood. "Yes, Your Honor. We're seeking an immediate injunction preventing Brandon Tech from using any network architecture derived from Mr. Reeves's proprietary system." "And Mr. Martinez, you're representing the defendants?" Derek's lawyer stood. "Yes, Your Honor. We'll be arguing that the network in question was developed by Derek Reeves, who has full legal rights to the architecture. There's been no theft, no copying, and no grounds for an injunction." "Proceed." Gerald called me to testify first. I walked to the witness stand, raised my right hand, swore to tell the truth. Gerald started with the basics: my background, my education, my experience in network architecture. Then he moved to the specific system at issue. "Mr. Reeves, did you develop the logistics network currently operated by Henderson Industries?" "Yes." "Over what period of time?" 23 years. Initial development started in 2002. The system has been continuously updated and expanded since then." "Did anyone assist you in this development?" "I had various colleagues over the years who contributed to specific modules. But the core architecture, the infrastructure design, the security protocols, those were my work." "Did your son, Derek Reeves, contribute to the network's development?" "He assisted with some operational improvements and user interface updates over the past 5 years. But he did not design or build the fundamental system." "Do you have documentation supporting this?" "Yes. Original design documents, implementation notes, partnership agreements, all dated and signed. They're in evidence as Exhibits A through M." Gerald walked me through the documents. Showed the judge my handwritten notes from 20 years ago. Showed client contracts with my name and signature. Showed the progression of development over time, all clearly attributable to me. Then he asked about the licensing agreement. "Mr. Reeves, what was Derek's legal relationship to the network?" "I licensed it to him 5 years ago when he wanted to start a consulting business. He had permission to operate the system and present it to clients, but ownership remained with me." "Did you ever transfer ownership to Derek?" "No." "Did you ever sign any document giving him full rights to the network?" "No." "Are you certain?" "Completely certain." Gerald sat down. Derek's lawyer stood up. "Mr. Reeves, you testified that you licensed the network to your son 5 years ago. Is that correct?" "Yes." "And in those 5 years, Derek operated the network independently, managed clients, solved problems, expanded operations?" "Yes, but just yes or no, please." "Did Derek operate the network independently?" "Operationally, yes." "And during those 5 years, did you maintain active involvement in day-to-day operations?" "No, but the ownership structure?" "Did you maintain active involvement, yes or no?" "No." "So for 5 years, your son ran the network while you had minimal involvement. And now that he's found success with that network, You're claiming he stole it from you. Isn't that correct? That's not yes or no. Tom stood. Objection. Counsel is mischaracterizing the testimony. Sustained, the judge said. Ms. Martinez, rephrase. Mr. Reeves, you've admitted your son operated the network for 5 years without your active involvement. During that time, did he make improvements to the system? Minor improvements to existing protocols. But improvements nonetheless? Yes. And these improvements, were they significant to the network's functionality? They were helpful, but not fundamental to the architecture. Who determines what's fundamental and what's not? You? Anyone with expertise in network architecture can determine that. But your opinion is that Derek's contributions were minor, while yours were major? That's factually accurate, yes. Based on your assessment, your biased assessment, as his father who's now in conflict with him. Objection, Tom said. Sustained. Ms. Martinez, move on. She switched tactics. Mr. Reeves, you testified you never signed a document transferring ownership to Derek. Are you familiar with the document marked as Defendant's Exhibit 1? Gerald stood. Your Honor, that document is disputed. We believe it's fraudulent. Then we'll let Mr. Reeves examine it, the judge said. Proceed. Derek's lawyer handed me a document. I read it carefully. It was a transfer agreement, dated 3 years ago. It granted Derek full and complete ownership of the logistics network in exchange for assuming all operational and financial responsibility. And at the bottom was a signature that looked like mine. But it wasn't mine. Mr. Reeves? The judge prompted. This signature is forged, I said. How can you be sure? Because I never signed this document. I never even saw it before today. But it looks like your signature. It's a good forgery, but it's not genuine. My actual signature has specific characteristics that this lacks. Derek's lawyer smiled. Convenient. Every defendant claims documents they don't like are forged. It's not convenient, it's true. I can provide handwriting samples for comparison. We'll arrange for an expert analysis, the judge said. But for now, Mr. Reeves, explain why you're certain you never signed this. Because I would never transfer ownership without retaining some legal documentation, without having my lawyer review it, without ensuring my intellectual property rights were protected. This document has none of those protections. It's not something I would ever sign. But you can't prove you didn't sign it. I can prove the signature characteristics don't match my genuine signatures on other documents. I can prove this document doesn't exist in any of my files, physical or digital. I can prove no lawyer ever reviewed it with me. The absence of all that evidence is proof enough. The judge made notes. We'll order a handwriting analysis. Continue, Ms. Martinez. But Derek's lawyer had made her point. She'd created doubt. Even if the document was eventually proven fraudulent, for now it existed as a competing narrative. She asked me a few more questions, mostly trying to paint me as controlling and vindictive, then released me. Derek was called next. He walked to the stand confidently, swore in, sat down with perfect posture. Gerald started the cross-examination. Mr. Derek Reeves, did you build the logistics network currently under dispute? I've worked on it extensively over the past 5 years. I've modernized it, improved it, and expanded its capabilities. But did you build the original architecture? I built on my father's original framework, yes. That's not what I asked. Did you create the fundamental system design? Derek hesitated. I created the modern version of the system. By modifying your father's design? By updating outdated protocols and implementing new technologies. So you didn't design the core architecture, you modified it. I significantly enhanced it. Enhanced is not the same as created. Did you or did you not design the fundamental network infrastructure? The current system is substantially different from what my father built 20 years ago. Answer the question, Did you design the fundamental infrastructure? Derek's jaw tightened. No, my father designed the original infrastructure. Thank you. Now, regarding the document you've presented as a transfer agreement, when did you receive this document? 3 years ago. My father signed it when he decided to retire from active involvement in the network. Do you have any record of this signing? Any witnesses? Any documentation of the meeting where this supposedly occurred? It was just the two of us, a private agreement. How convenient. And you never mentioned this document to anyone until now, when you needed it to defend against IP theft claims. I didn't think I needed to mention it. It was a private family matter. A private family matter that conveniently transfers valuable intellectual property. And you're certain your father signed this. I watched him sign it. Yet he claims the signature is forged, and our preliminary analysis suggests characteristics inconsistent with his verified signatures. Then the preliminary analysis is wrong. Or you forged the document. Objection. Ms. Martinez stood. Counsel is accusing my client of fraud without evidence. Sustained. Mr. Moss, stick to questions. Gerald nodded. Let me ask directly. Did you create this transfer agreement yourself and forge your father's signature? No. Did you have anyone else forge it? No. Then you maintain your father genuinely signed this document 3 years ago? Yes. Despite having no record of the signing, no witnesses, and no corroborating documentation? Family agreements don't always come with witnesses and documentation. Gerald paused, looked at the judge. Your Honor, we request this document be submitted for immediate forensic analysis. We believe it's fraudulent, and we're confident analysis will prove that. Granted, but until that analysis is complete, both versions of events remain on the record. The judge looked at Derek. Mr. Reeves, I'm going to ask you directly. Did you forge that document? Derek met her eyes without flinching. No, Your Honor. If forensic analysis proves you did, you understand you'll face criminal charges for fraud? I understand, but I didn't forge anything. The judge made more notes. Continue. Gerald asked Derek about the data extraction, about his access to the network systems, about his conversations with Brandon Tech. Derek admitted to extracting system specifications but claimed he was only gathering documentation of his own work. He admitted to talking with Brandon Tech but claimed he was simply exploring business opportunities, not stealing intellectual property. Every answer was carefully crafted. Just enough truth to be defensible, just enough misdirection to create doubt. Finally, Gerald asked, Mr. Derek Reeves, do you believe you have the right to sell or transfer the network architecture to Brandon Tech? I believe I have the right to license my work to business partners, yes? Even though the fundamental architecture was created by your father? I've substantially modified and improved that architecture. The current system is my work, based on your father's foundation, based on old protocols I've modernized. You keep saying modernized, but can you actually explain how the system works? Can you detail the handshake sequences, the failover cascades, the renewal protocols? Derek's confidence faltered slightly. Those are technical details that you don't understand because you didn't build them. You operated them, but you don't understand the underlying architecture. Isn't that true? I understand enough to maintain and expand the system. Then explain the 18-month renewal protocol. What is it? How does it work? Why is it necessary? Derek glanced at his lawyer. That's a proprietary process. You don't know, do you? I know it exists and that it requires manual renewal. But you don't know how to perform the renewal. You don't know why it's structured the way it is. You don't know what happens if it fails. Because your father never taught you those details. I didn't need to know operational minutia to... It's not minutia. It's fundamental to the system's security and integrity. And you don't know it because you didn't build the system. You just operated it. Ms. Martinez objected. The judge sustained. But the damage was done. The hearing continued for another hour. More witnesses, more documents, more arguments about ownership and rights and who built what. Finally, the judge called a halt. I've heard enough for now. I'm ordering the following. First, immediate forensic analysis of the disputed transfer agreement. Second, a full accounting of what network data Derek Reeves extracted and what he shared with Brandon Tech. Third, temporary restrictions on Brandon Tech's use of any network architecture until this matter is resolved. Your Honor, Ms. Martinez objected, that effectively shuts down my client's business. Then your client should have been more careful about the intellectual property he was using. I'll issue a written ruling within 10 days. Until then, Brandon Tech ceases all operations involving the disputed network architecture. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel came down. Derek stood and walked out without looking at me. His lawyer followed, already talking rapidly on her phone. Tom clapped me on the shoulder. That went well. Did it? The judge ordered forensic analysis. That's what we wanted. Once that proves the signature is forged, Derek's entire defense collapses. And then? And then he's facing fraud charges, possibly prison time. I watched Derek disappear down the hallway and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, just a hollow emptiness where my son used to be.